I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. It's right there on the screen. Follow us on the podcast at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to our YouTube channel, like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell your friends about it, guys. I'd really appreciate that. Also, check me out at bjpen.com and MMARings.net. So, a pretty good show today. I'm going to be talking about the PFL card from yesterday, as well as a couple of really good fight announcements and a few pieces of news. When I did the show yesterday, there were no odds for PFL. Unfortunately, they dropped really late, so I didn't get a chance to even talk about the card. I should have mentioned that. There's really no point in me breaking down the fights if I don't have the odds in front of me. So I didn't want to guess what the odds makers would have. So let's just get right into the card. I'm going to use the Tapology sheet and just go down from top to bottom. So main event of the evening, and I really have no idea why PFL booked this as the main event, but Jared Rosal picks up a unanimous decision win over Satoshi Ishii. A really grinding fight, which is exactly how I thought it'd play out. Very, very grinding fight for 3 rounds. Really close fight. Rosal got the unanimous decision win. I thought he probably did win the fight, but I don't know how wide the scores some of them were. But still, he definitely got his hand raised and moves on to the next round. PFL. He was actually an underdog at close. Rosal closed at plus 185. So there was some value there in Rosal at those odds for sure. I believe, Ishii opened only at minus 140. So people were betting all over Ishii, and Rosal definitely picked up a good win as a dog. So it wasn't a great fight. It was a boring fight, but he gets the win as an underdog. And anyone who bet on Jared Rosal made some good money. Next up, light heavyweight bout, Vinny Magalhaes pretty much just takes care of business against Rakeem Cleveland. First round armbar submission win. Second time Vinny's beat Rakeem Cleveland. I hope we don't see this fight next year. That's the one problem with PFL. You'll have these kind of rematches that no one really wants to see once in a while. So this was one of those fights I don't think we really need to see again. But Rakeem Cleveland cannot defend submissions. Vinny's one of the best in the world at submissions. So really wasn't hard to pick this fight. Vinny Magalhaes wins as a minus 300 favorite. Next up, Victor Nemkov picks up a split decision win over Rashid Yusupov. And this was an upset again. Victor Nemkov actually closes a plus 185 underdog. So another underdog. And I even wrote in my opening odds preview, be careful of PFL. Like you think you can just throw these big favorites into parlays together. Not in PFL. Maybe it works in Bellator most of the time, not in PFL, because you always see these 1 or 2 underdogs come through with a win. So in this case, it was Victor Nemkov. He gets the win. This guy's a 30-7 record. So he's been around a long time. And I definitely think he's got to be one of the favorites to win that 205-pound tournament. Next up, heavyweight bout, Ali Asayev defeats Carl Seven and Tufafa via unanimous decision. This was kind of disappointing in a way because this guy was minus 1,700 at close. So Ali Asayev was supposed to win this fight by stoppage, and he only wins decision. So good for him to get his nod, this hand raised, but you got to finish a guy like Badwater, I think. That guy is very inconsistent. We've seen him in Bellator before, and he's kind of a guy that is meant to just brought in to lose. So he's meant to be beaten, and Isayev won, but he didn't win by stoppage, which he should have won. So kind of disappointing, and definitely something to watch out for, I think, going into the next round of the tournament, of the heavyweight tournament. Next up, Maxime Grisham defeats Mikhail Mokhtarian via first round knockout. Grisham closed as a minus 285 favorite, so he was expected to win this fight. And I actually believe that Mokhtarian opened as the favorite at, I think, Bet Online. So that's kind of crazy that he opened as the favorite. I mean, I think most people thought Grisham would win. He does get the win in this fight. Obviously, a really good win. First round knockout. Next up, Mohamed Daris picks up a first round knockout over Valdrin Estrefi. Daris looks really good. He's the second seed actually in this tournament. I'll talk about the matchups in a second, but Mohamed Daris, minus 240 favorite, picks up the first round win. Next up, Umar Nurmagomedov defeats Sidmar Honorio via unanimous decision. This guy's 11-0 now. He's Habib's cousin, so he's obviously got some hype with the last name. Gets the decision win. I think we wanted to see this guy get finished, but you know what? This Sidmar Honorio guy, he's not a bomb by any means. Like he was brought in to lose, but if you look at his resume, he has some pretty good experience against high-level guys like Aljamain Sterling, Jimmy Rivera. So he's been around a while. Again, Nurmagomedov gets the win. This was not a non-tournament fight. This was just like a featured bout. Good for him to get the win, but I think PFL is expecting a little bit more from him in his next fight. Next up, Francimar Barroso defeats Ben Edwards via unanimous decision in the heavyweight division. I don't think any surprise here. Barroso obviously has a lot of experience at PFL now. Minus 250 favorite. He's a former UFC fighter. He's a decent fighter, honestly. Like, he's not the most exciting guy, but he gets the job done most of the time. So good for Barroso here. Next up, Denis Goltsov defeats Kevin Tiller via second round Ezekiel choke. Great submission here by Goltsov. I mean, Tiller's got to defend this submission, but geez, what a great submission by Goltsov. Looked like Alexei Oleinik out there, gets on top, pulls off the Ezekiel choke from top position. So excellent finish by Goltsov here, although I do believe that a guy like Tiller, who has some submission skills himself, should be defending that kind of choke. But either way, Goltsov wins the fight. He closed as a minus 290 favorite, so a big favorite here. And he actually improved to 24-5. So he has to be one of the favorites to win the heavyweight tournament. Next up, one of the biggest surprises of this year's light heavyweight tournament continues his torrid pace. Emiliano Sordi defeats Bazagit Atiev via first-round knockout. This guy's list looked unbelievable. Sordi he closed actually as a plus 165 underdog. So, and again, another underdog wins on this card. That's 3 underdogs that were pretty good, plus money. These guys have actually fought before. They fought last year, and Atiev won via first-round knockout. So you can see why people were kind of betting against him here. But since then, man, this guy's looked really good, Sordi. He's 2-0 this year against Vinny Magalhaes and Atiev with both wins by KO. So this guy's looked amazing. I think he's got to be one of the favorites to win the 205-pound tournament at this point, just because he has so much experience, and I think he really has turned a page in his career. I mean, this guy's fought everywhere. He's fought in Bellator. He's fought some really good fighters. He's fought jungle fights. Like, he's got good experience. He has some good wins in his career. And he's also lost a few fights, and I think you do learn from fights. Like, for instance, he fought Ryan Spann in the Contender Series last year, yeah. And last year he lost by first round submission. He was released, came to PFL, and since then he's 3-1. So I think he's learned from that loss. This is a good fighter here, guys. Sordi's definitely really good. Argentinian guy. I feel like the UFC may have missed the boat on him. You know, they seem to be wanting to go to South America. I think he would have been a really good fighter for them to have as they venture down to South America, to countries like Argentina, which they've been to once. But I think he'd be, good because, man, this guy's an awesome fighter. He's got a lot of KO power. Next up, Alex Nicholson, another guy with a lot of knockout power, defeats Zeke Tooney Willie via first-round knockout. Really good win by Nicholson. Check out the video of this one, guys. This was nasty. Nicholson closes at a minus 150 favorite. And opening up the card, Jordan Johnson defeats Siggy Pesalelli via unanimous decision. Jordan Johnson, minus 675 favorite. He needed this win after losing his PFL debut to, what was it? Yeah, Maxime Gershon. So he needed that win to bounce back from that loss. I mean, this guy was a top prospect in the UFC. He went 4-0 in the UFC, but he was criticized for being, quote-unquote, boring due to his wrestling style, grappling-heavy style, but he gets to win this fight. So overall, I think a pretty decent card overall. I mean, I think we expected a lot of finishes because there were heavyweights and stuff, but there were a couple dragon fights. And again, I think the decision to make Rochald and Ishii as your main event is very, very, very strange. I don't really understand that. You could have picked any of these fights. As far as the tournament brackets go, I'll just get right into them right now. So we'll start with light heavyweight. The quarterfinals are set. It will be Sordi against Pesalelli. I mean, you have to favor Sordi in that fight. He is the number 1 seed. Next up, Ataev against Nemkov. That should be an interesting fight, although I think Nemkov will probably be favored at this point. You got Magalhaes against Yusupov. Magalhaes probably favored there. And then Grisham against Johnson in a rematch, which should be interesting. I mean, Grisham did win the first fight, so I guess he'd be favored here in the rematch. But Johnson, I think he's improved a little bit, so we'll see what happens in the rematch. As far as the heavyweight goes, Goltsov against Ishii. Goltsov's going to be a big favorite there. Tiller against Isaev. Tiller does have the wins by finish, but Isaev, I think, even as a lower seed, will probably be favored there. Nicholson against Barroso should be interesting, but Barroso, I believe, will be favored. And DeReese against Rochald. That should be an interesting fight. Actually, that's a really interesting fight. DeReese got the KO power, but Rochal's got the wrestling. DeReese probably be favored because of all the KOs he's had, but Rochald might actually be able to win that fight. So we'll see what happens, but definitely some good fights coming up. What else here? So as far as news goes, I've got a couple pieces of news, and then I'll get right into fight announcements. Abraham Kawa is out there. That's the manager of Jorge Masvidal. He's denying that the UFC's offered a fight against Leon Edwards, and Leon Edwards responded saying they did offer a fight. So there's a lot of back and forth here. I think that the Kawa camp wants this fight, Masvidal against Edwards. I think everyone wants to see that. The fans, I think the UFC does want it. Although Kawa says that Masvidal will be waiting for a title shot. He says that Masvidal has no problem waiting for Colby to get his title shot first, and then we'll fight the winner of Colby and Usman. But, man, he could be waiting a long time. So if I'm Masvidal, I would try to get a fight against Edwards on the undercard of that Colby and Usman event, because you never really know. And just say there is an injury or who knows, like a USADA thing, then Masvidal could jump into the title shot anyway. So I think he should probably get his fight booked and against Edwards, and then we'll see what happens next. Fabricio Werdum is returning, I believe, next year, and he wants to fight for Francis Ngannou. I mean, you can't blame the guy. I mean, he wants to fight a top-ranked guy and get back in the mix, so that makes sense, I guess. But I think Ngannou would destroy him at this point in his career. Although if the fight went to the ground, who knows, right? And speaking of heavyweight, Ilir Latifi says he actually wants to move up to heavyweight, and he wants to fight Derrick Lewis in his heavyweight debut. So Derrick Lewis, he's booked against Blagojevic right now, but who knows what happens after that fight. And Latifi at heavyweight actually would be interesting. The guy's very bricked up at light heavyweight, but he's very short. So I don't know how he'd do at heavyweight, but hey, if the guy wants to test himself, fair enough. As far as fight announcements go, there was actually some pretty good fight announcements yesterday. UFC on ESPN 7. Okay, so this card takes place December 7th in Washington, D.C. So that's a new card, basically. It's not a new card that's been announced, but we're finally getting fights for it. We knew that this card was going to take place. And yes, December 7th at Capital One Arena in Washington, which I believe is where the Washington Capitals play, as well as the Washington Wizards. That's correct. So a couple of fights here. I like this matchup. Claudia Gadelha is taking on Cynthia Calvillo. Should be a good fight. Claudia Gadelha, she's obviously one of the best fighters in the women's strawweight division. 6-4 record though in UFC, so she's been a little disappointing in UFC. To be fair to Claudia, she's only lost to the best fighters in the world, like Yana twice, Andrade, and Ansarov. So those are not bad losses, but she did not look good against Randa Marquez, and I'm very worried about her right now at this point in her career. I think she is on decline. She is only 30 in age, but she's been fighting since 2008. She's been fighting a long time. The loss to Ansarov, I think, was not a good fight for her. She did not look good in that fight. Even the Esparza fight, where she won a split decision, most people thought she lost. So she has the potential here still to be, I think, a top contender, but she's got to really turn it around now. And she takes on Calvillo here, who is 32 years old, and Calvillo has looked really good in the UFC. 5-1 in the UFC. One loss to Esparza, and since then, back-to-back wins over Botello and Casey. I like this matchup. I think it's a good fight for both girls. For Gadelha, she has to beat someone like Calvillo to prove she's still a contender. For Calvillo, it's an opportunity to jump into the contendership at 115. So, not sure what the odds. I think Gadelha will be favored just based on the fact that she usually is a big favorite in her fights, but I would not count out Calvillo in this fight. I think stylistically, it's not a bad fight for her. Next up, also on that same card, UFC on ESPN 7, Aspen Ladd takes on Yana Kunitskaya. That should be an interesting fight as well. Aspen Ladd needs to bounce back here after getting that knockout loss against Jermaine Ranby in the first round, 16 seconds in. Before that, obviously, was undefeated 8-0. 24 years old, so she's got a lot of potential still, but that was not a good loss for her. Kunitskaya, 29 years old, and since joining the UFC in 2018, she's 2-1. She lost to Cyborg in the slaughter, and then since then has beat up Lena Landsberg and Marion Renault. Looked pretty good in those fights, so those are some good wins. This is a good fight. I do lean towards Ladd. Still, even with the loss to Jermaine Durand in her last fight, I still think she's a really good prospect. Kunitskaya was good too, but I think Ladd should be favored in this fight. And the last fight announcement today, and I really like this fight as well, Nicolas Dalby will be taking on Alex Oliveira at UFC Copenhagen. So Nicolas Dalby last week announced that he would be returning to the UFC. Good for this guy, man. He grinded his way back to the octagon. So Nicolas Dalby is 34 years old now. He fought in the UFC in 2015 to 2016. He went 1-2-1. He defeated Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, which is a great win. And that win improved him to 14-0 in his career. Then he had a draw there until it was a fight of the night. And then he lost to Zach Cummings to Peter Zabata via unanimous decision. The UFC cut him. He lost a split decision to Carlo Pedersoli Jr. in Cage Warriors, which was at that time a bad loss for him. And then since then, he's bounced back with 3 straight wins. And then no contest in his last fight against Ross Houston in that fight that had all the blood all over the surface where the fighters couldn't fight. And the referee, I think Mark Goddard, had to stop the fight due to no contest because the fighters were literally slipping on the blood. So this guy's earned his way back to the UFC. Good for him. He's talked about his personal issues on his Instagram. Check that out. He's got a long post there talking about, I think he had some drinking problems and stuff. So, this guy has definitely turned his career around. He's 34 years old now, seems super mature, and I'm very curious to see how this fight against Kawa Oliveira goes. Kawa Oliveira, 31 years old, 19-7, 1-2 no contest record. Crazy record. In the UFC, he is 9-5 and 1 no contest. Okay, I got that right. Crazy record. This guy's always in crazy fights. He actually is coming off 2 straight losses to Gunnar Nelson and Mike Perry. So a little disappointing there by Alex Oliveira. But before that, you can't forget, he knocked out Carlo Pedersoli Jr. in just 39 seconds and defeated Carlos Condit via submission. So at his best, Oliveira's, I think, one of the top 15 guys in the welterweight division. But he just hasn't looked great lately, and he's got some personal issues going on as well. So that's something to keep in mind here. This should be a good fight. Dalby's fighting at home in Copenhagen, so that's going to be huge for him. But I do think Oliveira is a better fighter. So I got to see how the line comes out for this one. I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, I think Oliveira might win this fight, but Dalby being at home could give him a really big edge if this fight goes the whole distance and the judges get involved. So we'll see what happens. But either way, definitely some good fights coming up, guys. Very, very excited for these upcoming bouts. Now, tomorrow will be UFC Uruguay, so that should be a good card. The weigh-ins happened today. I don't think anyone missed weight from what I saw, so that's good. All the fights are going to go on, 13 fights. Definitely going to be watching that card tomorrow. Guys, myself and Cole Sheldon did a podcast on Tuesday breaking down the whole card. We gave our picks for every fight in the card. So go back and check that podcast out. It's a pretty good podcast with Cole. And I think that's it for this weekend, guys, as far as fights and stuff goes. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure some crazy news will happen over the weekend. But until then, I hope you guys have an awesome Friday and an awesome Saturday and Sunday as well. So, guys, thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at MMAOB right there on the screen. This podcast is available at MMAOBsburger.com. It's available on our YouTube channel. Like, share, comment, subscribe, tell your friends about it. I appreciate that, guys. Also, check me out at bjpenn.com and MMARings.net, which I have to give a plug to here because I wrote an article about the Liz Carmouche and Valentina Shevchenko rematch, which is happening tomorrow night. I digged up a little bit on the first fight. There wasn't too much out there. There's no video of that fight. However, I did read some oral accounts of what happened in that fight, why it was a no contest, and I talked about that in my article where I basically said that Valentina is looking for revenge and Carmouche is looking to prove that the first fight was not a fluke. So check that article out, guys. I appreciate you tuning into the show, guys. Have an amazing weekend. I'll be back on Monday to recap UFC Uruguay. Have a good one, guys.